You have got to be kidding me. Welcome back to the Wizard Shop. And this thing is back. Also, you guys are back and this is back. Again! I just can't get rid of this thing. I have tried to help so many people. I just want this car to be gone, and here's the story behind it. If you click the link below, it'll take you right to one of our previous videos that we did on this. It explains the whole backstory to this car and how I came about it, how I came about owning this car. But basically, just a quick little rundown. This is a car that I acquired from a customer who refused to pay the bill with no other reason than he just didn't have the money. So I finally found a buyer. It's a friend of my daughter. She needed a car, and I sold it to her really cheap because I just want the thing gone. It was sold, she picked up the car, but then unfortunately, for whatever reason, it just sat for a few months. It just sat there. She never used it or whatever. I don't know the story behind that, but I know I get a call that it won't start. They've been out there, they've tried a battery, they've tried battery terminal cleaners, they've tried this, they've tried that. It won't start, it just cranks and cranks and cranks and cranks. Guys, this thing has ran fine for all this time I've had it and all this iterations of trying to get rid of this car. It has always started, always ran perfect. And the one time I finally can see it go away, it won't start. What's wrong with this car? It's like, all right, well, I'll go check it out. And I did some inspecting. Let me show you guys how I checked it and what I found. So here we are under the hood. You can see they put a battery in it. They tried to clean the terminals. They tried various things, and I tried to get an idea of what's going on. I called them, does it crank? Does it try to start? Or they didn't know. It just won't start. That's all they know. So I get out here, take a look at it, and it will crank from here to eternity. It'll crank forever. It just won't start. And I know that it's pretty common on these that the distributor will fail. I pulled one of these off while someone was cranking it with my plastic pliers that I use. You guys can find it on my Amazon affiliates page. And check for spark. And it had none. The coil, the igniter, and everything is all part of the distributor. It's all built together. It's not like a Honda or something else. So I called around, and a new distributor for one of these is $300 no matter who I went with. Rock Auto, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, CarQuest, Napa, it didn't matter. And this lady tried to get a reliable car to go back and forth to work, and it's so expensive. So I found a good used one on eBay for $100. So I finally ordered it and got it in the mail, got it installed, and it runs again. It started immediately right up. So that definitely was the problem. We got it fixed. I'm hoping that she can take this car and use it, and I don't see it anymore. Finally can be done with it. This car has done a lot of sitting. In between different occasions of trying to get rid of it, there's been long periods of sitting, and it kind of brings to mind what you should do if a car is knowingly going to be stored for a while. Now, if it's going to be stored 6 months or less, there's a lot less things that you have to do. The fuel, pretty much most modern gasoline with ethanol in it is good for 3, maybe 6 months at the most. So you're probably going to be okay with fuel. Just before you park it, make sure all your fluids are topped up. Make sure your tires are all filled up, that you don't have any leaks. If you know you've had leaks on tires, you might want to get that addressed before it sits for a long time. But basically, you could unhook the battery and it could set like that. No, that's not really a problem. Where the problem lies is when you go past the 6-month mark and you want to store it for a year or 2 years or maybe even more. Then we get into a realm where a lot of things need to be done to prepare the car for storage. One of the things I would do is get the tires off the ground. You could put it on blocks, you could put it on jack stands, and just kind of had the tires up off the floor. Because any car I've ever worked on that's sat for a year or more, we finally get it running, there's issues or whatever, and I go out and drive it and the whole car just shakes like crazy. and it's because there's flat spots on the tires. It's been sitting on that one spot on that tire all this time, and it actually deforms the tire. If it's going to be longer than a year, you're getting in the 2-year range especially, you need to get the weight of the vehicle off the tires. And that would definitely help you to be able to use them again when you finally do go drive it, or at least for a little while. Another thing is you probably want to get the fuel tank low and maybe even drain the tank. And if that's not a possibility, they do make additives. Stable is one of them that you can use. You put it into the gas and it'll keep the gas for quite a long time. But really I would recommend to drain the fuel or get the fuel completely out, because every problem I've ever had with a car that sat a long time was always mainly the fuel system. The hoses are rotted, the fuel pump is dead, sensors or different things along the fuel lines are shot, and it very easily runs into thousands of dollars to get it running again. Amazingly, in the years that I've been fixing cars, the one car that's been very consistent with being sitting a long time, thousands of dollars to get back running again, it always seems to be a Porsche 928, guys. I've been through several of those. Not just one or two, several. I get a phone call, I've got a Porsche 928, and usually I can stop them right there and think, it's been sitting for 5 years, let me guess, and it doesn't run, and you want me to get it running again. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It seems like it's always Porsche 928s. I don't know why. I don't know the theory or the reasoning behind that. But I've gotten several of those running again, and it was always $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000. Those old Bosch CIS Jetronic systems, they're expensive. There's tons of components. There's warm-up regulators, cold start valves, fuel pumps, fuel accumulators. You start adding this stuff up, 500, 200, 300, and then the labor. It's really expensive, guys. And you think if you were to drain the fuel out and just let it sit dry, probably all the stuff would still work again. You may want to disconnect the battery if it's going to be a long time, because a lot of newer cars, especially like the ML350 that I now drive, just sitting there, not doing anything, it runs ventilation to keep the cabin fresh air. You can hear a little fan running at times. Imagine that over two years. It finally will kill the battery. It'll finally die. So you just want to disconnect the battery, or you could put a battery tender on it, but that'll get you by for a year or two. If it's going to be longer than that, you need to disconnect the battery and just get it out of there.
Could it affect any of the electronics if the batteries aren't connected?
Now, as far as modern electronics in cars, if the battery's disconnected for a long time, it's not going to hurt it. It's not going to do anything bad. When you go to turn it back on and put your battery back in, you're going to have to do security codes on the radio, or maybe reset a few things. Your settings are going to be all lost, but it should start right back up. You may start it and it dies. Start it again and hold the gas pedal down a little bit. It has to relearn its idle. You have to do a few things like that, but other fluids, your differential and your transmission and stuff, you really don't need to drain those. Your engine oil, you don't need to drain those. You may want to, if it's been sitting a long time, every couple of 3 months, get out and at least crank it over, or start it and let the fluid circulate so it can coat the inside of the engine, not let it rust, corrode, or anything like that. Your belts and things you don't really need to worry about. Your brakes. The main thing is tires, fuel system, and your battery.
What about if it's in an unheated garage and you're in a cold area for winter?
You want to make sure and check your antifreeze and make sure it's good. You want to make sure it's good to like 30 below or 40 below. If it's not, it could very likely freeze and crack the block, or something bad could happen. Or ruin your radiator. Make sure your antifreeze is good to go. But like I just said, the main things I've always come up against with cars that have sat for a long time is always the fuel system. The tires are shot and the battery. Now, if you live out in a rural area, out in the country, I guess it could happen in the city, but I've seen it most out in the country settings, is mice. I don't care how clean your house is. I don't care if you have a $5 million house. I have fixed mice damage on very expensive cars, very wealthy customers. Mice get in through the winter. They want to find a warm place to make a nest and just kind of take it easy for the winter. They don't care that it's a Ferrari. They don't care if it's a Rolls Royce. They will chew the wires. They will do damage. You have to make sure you have some mouse traps out around the car or inside the building that it's going to be in, because they will get in there. In any vehicle, any building, they will get in and they can cause lots of damage. Now, some people will say, well, why don't you put some poison out or something like that? And I don't recommend that for cars because they could eat the poison and then get up inside your dash where their nest is and die. And it just ruins the interior. The smell will just ruin the interior of the car. I prefer traps outside of the car, along the walls in the building or something of that nature, because they're going to go out and try to find food or try to do other things, and then they can get caught in a trap and not come back to the car. You don't want them back in the car when they die. I've got some updates on the '69 Fleetwood, which used to be the Fleetwood Slow'em, or was going to be, but now it's back to being a Fleetwood Brougham. Let's go over and take a look at some of the updates we have on the engine. We got the heads back, guys. I was going to put a diesel engine in this old '69 Cadillac, and things just got to be where it was having to modify so much. I decided to just stop, pull the motor out, fix the original one, and get it back in business. We've got the original motor cleaned up. It's just about ready to reassemble. I just got the cylinder heads back from the machine shop. And like I said in the previous video, I use Martin Machine in Wichita, my preferred shop to use for any kind of machine work. I've trusted him for years. He does excellent, excellent work. These are the cylinder heads, and I had him just slightly resurface them, just because they're already out. As we talked about in the previous video, none of the valves were sealing. You could pour liquid, which I used antifreeze, into the chambers, and it would just pour out the exhaust and intake ports. The guy at Martin Machine, Mike Martin, when he pulled the valves out, he said when he was rebuilding this, they were just so bad. They were pitted. It's no wonder it was running rough and running uneven and idling rough. While the valves were out, he put hardened valve seats. He put new valve guides. He also put new valve seals and little umbrellas on them. Some shims on the springs, and that's pretty much all he had to do. Basically just rebuilt the heads. He assures me that based on what he found when rebuilding these heads, that this alone will solve the rough running, bad running problem that I had. I was just for sure the engine was shot. But after I get it apart and look inside and look at the cylinders and things, the core engine is fine. The heads were the problem. And I guess from research I've done, that's a common issue on these older Cadillacs. The valve seats don't seat anymore, and there could be cracks in the head, but these were Magnaflux. They're not cracked, luckily. So resurface, hardened valve seats, valve guides, valve seals, and we're ready to rock and roll. So we're going to be putting these heads on here probably this week and get ready to put the motor back into the Fleetwood Brougham. I'm very excited to get this thing on the road. It's been sitting here a long time. So that's kind of an update on the Cadillac, the '69 Fleetwood. That's where we're at with it. It's taken me a while to get these heads back, and I told the guy I was in no serious rush, but he did a great job, just as always. Fair price, and these are ready to go. So thanks for going along and kind of hearing the final story on this thing. I hope this car runs good and does good for her. I really do. I just want to see it gone. I'm tired of looking at it. And that's where we're at on the Cadillac. We've got more work to go, but I'm happy that it's going to get fixed and it's going to be a driver. I really love that car. It's been sitting a long time. And as you can see, I have it on jack stands, not resting on the tires. So thank you guys for following along. Check my Amazon affiliates page. There's tools for sale. We got merchandise for sale on the link below. If you haven't subscribed already, click the subscribe button. You won't be disappointed. Many more cool videos to come. Thanks for watching.